winding down. They're just getting started. This is South Coast Tonight with Chris McCarthy and Marcus Farrell.
Yeah, we're just going to get right into it. So we're here with Congressman Bill Keating still. Hey, Congressman, thanks for holding over the news break for us. We appreciate it.
No, sure.
We were discussing the Ukraine, the importance of it, and also the Chinese balloon. So, Bill, on the Chinese balloon, as you point out, Secretary of State Blinken was about to head to China. So, and obviously they knew that has now been canceled. Do you think that played into the calculation here? I don't see how it couldn't have.
Oh, it was the reason.
Okay.
For the postponement of the meeting. You know, you never...
No. I mean, for the Chinese to send the balloon.
I don't think so. I think that was that really for the Chinese, that was a blunder.
Okay.
For whatever reason. Maybe they thought they wouldn't be detected. But for whatever reason, that was an embarrassment because the Chinese never apologized. And they apologized.
I noticed that, yes.
But they apologized, but then lied and said that it was a weather balloon. But even to get them to apologize is rare. So they were really embarrassed, and I think they took that apology, one that wasn't satisfactory, to try and salvage the discussions. They planned for this, and we do a great deal of planning ourselves for several months. This was a very big deal. It was important just to make sure we're talking, and there's great communications back and forth. Mm-hmm. We've done things in advance. You probably followed the news where we're building up our military presence in the Philippines. That is a major concern, and very aggressive on our part as a level of deterrence on the Chinese. So this thing has been building for a long time. At least this would have been an opportunity to maybe make sure the lines of communications are better. So there's there's not miscalculation with any of this. But by the same token, this was an embarrassment for them, and. To me, that's one of the things I couldn't explain. They're usually not this, I don't know what term to put to it. Reckless. Yeah.
You know, well, speaking of Congressman Bill Keating, Bill, my thought on this is it seems a lot like when Khrushchev and President Eisenhower were going to meet, and then suddenly the U-2 spy plane was shot down over Russia, right? Thereby canceling that summit. The timing is very coincidental there as well. Is there any chance that maybe hardliners within the military who do not want to have a favorable relationship with the United States, who fear that Xi may have given away Taiwan or prevented Taiwan from being absorbed again, orchestrated this embarrassment?
I don't think Xi would ever change his position on Taiwan. But you never know with the Chinese what's going on, whether that was something meant to disrupt it. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. But I think it's more likely that they thought they could just get away with it.
Okay.
And, they had probed into Hawaii prior to this, and we knew that. Okay. So maybe they were just taking an incremental approach. Don't forget, they had control of this. This isn't a balloon that's just drifting along.
Correct. Explain that to people. Congressman, explain that.
It's got the capability to be motorized and to be navigated. So, but it's done with parts. It's interesting. With radar, of course, radar is always looking at metal, and this has very little metal. So it's not easy to detect. So it could well be that they had just planned on going around the boundary, just trying to see where they could go in, the way the Russians do with our airspace all the time in Alaska and everything. And they kept going. And then when they were discovered, who knows what happened after that. We'll find out. I'll have a chance to get briefed when I'm back in D.C.
So I noticed former CIA Director Leon Panetta, a former member of Congress.
Former Defense Secretary, too. Right.
Yeah. He said that we cannot let this balloon leave our airspace. Either they have to land it or we should shoot it down. Do they? Yeah.
I suspect when it gets out near the ocean, we're likely to take it down. Once we have all the information we need on what, I think I think we're getting information from this as well. And at the same time, we're shutting them down from transmitting their information.
So Congressman, I just want to pivot to something back here, and we appreciate you, again, holding over for the break to join us on this. I've been getting some calls on this. Obviously, the Army Corps of Engineers denied the two Cape Cod bridges that's in the 9th Congressional District along with us. I heard Senator Warren say it was basically that the state didn't put forward the right design for the bridges. Is that your accounting of why the funding failed?
Well, let's put it in perspective first. The likely timeline for this, 2028 is maybe when two of the inner bridges will be built. This is going to be two sets of twin bridges. In effect, there'll be 4 bridges. So the plan is to build bridges inside both of the existing Sagamore and Bourne bridges.
Okay.
And then when that's done, that'll have about the capability of the bridges now. Then they'll tear down the existing bridges, and then they'll put another bridges on both sides where the existing bridge was. So you'll have one-way traffic on one bridge. There'll be no median strip. So each bridge will be, in effect, 2 bridges.
Okay.
And that's going to end around 2031, projected. So look at the time frame. What we put money is we allocate the money. We appropriate the money. But there has to be an application process. We fill the orchard, but someone has to pick the fruit.
Okay.
So the people picking the fruit were the Army Corps and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And so when the first grant application was denied, and they don't give $1.8 billion out, for instance. They do it in phases because they're not going to take money and put it in the shelf for all the years I just described to you.
Oh,
It comes out in phases. So we haven't lost out on the money. We just didn't get 2 of the first incremental grants going forward. But we did try and find out, bringing the applicants together with the Department of Transportation and at the time Governor Baker, and say, what did you do with the grant process? What happened? So we don't, what's happening with these grants? We found out 2 of the major criteria, which is matching funds and having an earlier commencement time, it's called being shovel ready sooner, making sure that those 2 criterions were the biggest criteria, and these grants weren't competitive at all. So what they have to do going forward is put some matching funds on the table so you can compete with the other grants that are in there, and move up the time frame where you start construction sooner. And those 2 things, I think, will be done by the applicants. And then we'll have a more competitive grant process going forward. So this impression that, oh, my God, we lost out on all the money isn't accurate, because the money's just coming out in slices over a long period of time. And we'll get them.
So
Excellent.
I appreciate you bringing some clarity to that issue. One more thing before I let you go. Or did you have a question?
I have another one, too.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you a question, then Chris will ask you a question. But my question is, President Biden's given a State of the Union. What do you expect? What are you expecting from a State of the Union? Are you expecting any comments on China? We will probably hear about the Ukraine. Are we expecting any comments on China? And what else are you expecting from that speech?
Well, I think the president's going to take some time to talk about how we came out of COVID and the pandemic, and how the economy came out hot. I think maybe a little too hot, but it came out hot. We didn't get plunged into what happened in 2008 coming out of things. And I think he's going to mention how strong the economy has come forward after that, how it's moving, the jobless rate being, so low. The report today was kind of shocking in a good way.
Really, yes.
There was 537,000 new jobs last month. So I think he's going to talk about the economy, the direction it's going, some good news. I hope he mentions the fact that we can come together and not do what happened in 2011 and have our credit rating ruined more than it was for no reason than a political stunt back then.
Yeah.
Not having that happen to derail the economy now, and to talk about America's success working with our coalition and the threat against democracy. And I think where we began tonight's conversation together is going to be mentioned as well. why Ukraine is important and how the coalition is essential, how the U.S. is the leader, and we are, in that the indispensable party with this, and how important that is going forward. And I do think he'll mention China as well, and what we have to do. And maybe he'll have the opportunity to mention what we're doing there. We don't have the same kind of coalition we do in Europe for many reasons. It's a different part of the world. But Australia, some of the other Pacific, South Korea, Japan is even getting more militarized. All those efforts that we're doing in the Pacific as well will be mentioned. So I think he's going to go forward. He's going to talk about, I think, the dangerous times that we're in, in terms of where it really is historically and how we've met the challenge. And I think he's going to, so it'll be economy, it'll be some of the threats that we have, how we're meeting those threats, and how we have to work together. I do think, too, as he always tries, he's going to try and make a strong plea for bipartisanship to come together. Because a lot of these issues are longer in range, and unfortunately on both sides, there are extreme groups, and as you've witnessed Congress so far.
Yes.
And it's not partisan, it's factual. We're seeing very extreme behaviors already. But those extreme sides, to put that aside and to come together in a bipartisan way, I think that'll be part of his message as well. I don't know, but that's just what I think Joe Biden will be doing.
So, Congressman, the other thing I just want to ask you about, and it may be not something on most people's radar screens, but I know it's on yours. The Iranians have taken to the ocean. They're in our hemisphere. They've got 2 warships now. They're going to make their way down here and through the Panama Canal. For the first time ever, the Iranians are going to go through the Panama Canal. And they're going to link up with some of the other more hostile forces in Nicaragua and places like that, Latin America. What are your thoughts on the Iranians? What are they up to?
Well, they're our enemy,
yes.
And they want America destroyed. And they make no bones about it. They have their own difficulties internally. They've been rife with protests, the scope of which have never been bigger. They might be able to maintain them now, but I don't think they're going to go away internally. They're making alliances with Russia, providing them with military assets that Russia can't produce themselves right now. And they are the number one threat in the Middle East. So I think that it makes things so much more difficult in the world. But I'm glad you mentioned an opportunity to say,
sure,
because we always say, what's next? Because Chris will always say, what's next?
Right.
What should we keep our eye on?
Right.
Keep your eye on Palestine. It's very fragile right now, very fragile. And the leadership I was there last year and got to meet with the boss, but he's 85 years old now, and there's just the leadership isn't connecting with the people there. The turbulence there is serious, and if they're weak, then Hamas, a terrorist group, a threat to us as well as Israel, they're going to be more empowered. So it's and Iran is right in the middle of this.
Yes.
The better news in the area is we're building greater alliances with Iraq, and we need a strong Iraq to counter Iran. And they're going to have to do it themselves. But they're getting support not just from the U.S., but from UK and other areas of the world, Jordan. And so there's a coalition. I met with King Abdullah, the King of Jordan. We meet twice a year in any case. And I always very interested to see what he says. So they're working right now just to calm things down. Things are in such a state right now and so precarious that all our efforts, and Secretary Blinken just was there, is just to calm it down as we approach the holidays, when we approach Passover, Easter, Ramadan, all occurring at the same time. It's a tinderbox there. So Iran is probably one of the greatest malign forces we have to deal with. They're getting closer all the time now to nuclear weapons, and they're assisting Russia. So we continue. The way to deal with that I think, is to try and build a strong coalition in the Middle East to limit their ability to deal with that. The Israelis just went in and took out some of their areas that were connected to their, I think, the assets they were providing Russia. But this is a precarious time, and Iran is in the midst of all of this. I think in Russia's weakened influence in Latin America is something that perhaps Iran is trying to make some kind of outreach towards. But we're doing what we can ourselves in that regard. But the world is you can go spin right around the globe right now, and there's more conflicts, more dangers than in years. And I'm looking forward. They're at a tipping point, and I think right in the center of this is Ukraine. So if I can almost end up where I began,
please do,
and just talking about how important Ukraine is for Americans. It's also for every democracy in the world. It's important. China was looking at the reaction to the Russian aggression because they want to do the same in Taiwan. And their worst nightmare happened when they saw this coalition come together. That might deter China somewhat from their aggression. But it's so important for democracy as a whole that we win in Ukraine. And it's not just uniquely American self-interest. It's the self-interest of all democracy and Western thinking in the world.
Bill, Congressman Keating, we really appreciate your time. You're hanging around after the news. I know your constituents appreciate it as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well, I want to thank both of you. I mean, it's always a chance to talk about more regional issues and local issues, but I don't think there's enough opportunity, and I try and seek it, to talk about how things, from a security and economic standpoint, affect us here at home so importantly.
Right.
And you've always given the opportunity to have people listen to these issues, and there just aren't enough media access, opportunities to do that. So I really appreciate you doing that at this on the station.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate it.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
That was our Congressman, Bill Keating. I appreciate him staying. And we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. This is South Coast Tonight. We got a Nap Chat message. We do want to talk about some local stuff here, but we did get a Nap Chat message. Someone from Mattapoisett is asking, what if the balloon over U.S. contains biological material? We would be releasing it on ourselves?
I mean, I don't put anything past the Chinese. Obviously, look what they did to me the first time. So I don't know really. But the fact of the matter is, they're not supposed to be in our airspace, and it's a bipartisan opinion. They can't let this thing leave. And as Congressman Keating just said, they'll probably shoot it down once they get over a body of water.
Yeah. So if it's over a body of water, it would probably be less likely to, if there was anything harmful in it.
Right. Well, the problem is it's the size of 3 city buses.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of heavy equipment. So if they shot it down, even over Montana, it could crash. Whatever it hits, it's going to destroy.
Yeah.
So you got to get it where there's no people.
Because velocity and all that, it's going to crater.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to crater.
So imagine 3 school buses. 3 giant city buses.
I think that's an important point to bring up, that it's not just like this little balloon, right? A little birthday balloon.
No.
It is a massive, massive apparatus.
One of the things that former CIA Director Leon Panetta said is either that or get the Chinese to land it, which I thought was very important. It means that they believe that the Chinese can control it that much, so much that they can land it. They know they're deriving the direction.
Right.
But you remember a few years ago, Marcus, we used to have the agreement with the Russians. They would allow their spy planes to fly over us. We flew over them. Mm-hmm. That agreement was ended. The now the Chinese to do this is just so reckless.
Yeah, that's what, Keating had said. It was basically like amateurish, right? It was, 508-996-0500 is how you can join us this evening. Good evening, you're live.
Yeah, good evening, Marcus, and good evening, Chris. It's good to hear you in the studio.
Thank you.
You know, I want to talk about China, the Ukraine, and the Bidens.
Sure.
You know, the UN and the EU back in 2021 said that the Ukraine was classified them as the most corrupt nation in the world.
I don't disagree with that.
We know about the New York Post first reported about the $55 million from the Communist Chinese Party who gave the University of Penn Biden Center think tank, and the director of that think tank, UPenn, was none other than Anthony Blinken, who was the Secretary of State, and where the classified documents were found.
Right.
And not to mention, was reported widely, Rosemont Seneca Investment Company and Burisma Natural Gas and Natural Bank of the Ukraine, which the Bidens and others were involved in, and also. The Daily Mail also reported recently that Hunter Biden's invested money in biolabs, Chinese biolabs.
So I will tell you this, caller, because your information is good. I am very concerned about this. I'll tell you why. Those classified documents, as I explained, as I was talking with Marcus earlier, I don't know how the government is going to do a damage assessment. My concern is that those documents, those classified documents, were in a location. They were accessible. We know accessible. There's no argument about it. They were accessible to a man who was expelled for security reasons from the United States Naval Officers Corps. All right? Hunter Biden was thrown out of the Navy for security reasons. He had a drug problem. That's a security reason. That's the reason you're not allowed to be a drug addict in the United States Navy, okay? Particularly as an officer. He was asked, they kicked him out. He wasn't merely an officer with a drug problem. He was also the sitting vice president's son. So the Navy obviously had to make some serious political calculations before they threw him out of the Navy because he's a security risk. So the fact that he ended up living back at his father's house and the father brought security classified documents to his own home, which were now accessible because they were no longer under lock and key by someone who was deemed a security risk by the United States Navy, so much so that he was kicked out, is an incredible breach of trust. I am shocked to my core, quite frankly, about what has happened here.
You know what, Chris? I'm very concerned for our nation.
I agree with you.
There was another news story too that the whole thing with the classified documents in the garage where he kept his '67 Corvette. That the whistleblower was a Chinese lover of Hunter Biden, and I'm very concerned for our country that the president is compromised by the Chinese, especially when he was vice president, accepting $1 billion from the Chinese finance minister to start Rosemont Seneca Investment Company. And in closing, if I may, on China. China is not our competitor. They're our adversary. The various military flyovers over Taiwan, they're increasing naval exercises in the Pacific, not to mention in the Philippines, where they're trying to undermine our presence in the Philippines because they want to control the waterways and so they can control commerce. I'm very, very concerned.
Are we sure about that $1.5 billion thing? I don't think that's an actual figure. I don't think that's actually ever been confirmed. The $1.5 billion from China. That's an extraordinary amount of money.
Well, there is a report.
I don't think he received $1 billion.
I believe he did. There's a report put out by Senator Johnson and Senator
Ron Johnson from Wisconsin.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's about an 8-page report. It's declassified. It's worth reading. It details down to the penny a lot of these transactions. One of the things that is a problem is that we know Hunter Biden was getting money.
Yeah.
I just cannot understand what they were paying him for.
Okay.
Well, Chris, you know that when Donald Trump was president, the FBI also launched an investigation into Hunter Biden, and their investigation, they found that Hunter Biden had dealing with corrupt oligarchs. There was dark money laundering and human trafficking and drug trafficking operations over there.
What ends up happening is that there's so many details that it begins to sound like something imaginable, right?
Yeah.
So that what I think we have to do is focus on what you know, and you do a good job, sir, but on what you know, which is that no one is disputing that Hunter Biden got millions of dollars from foreign adversaries.
Right.
He didn't get them from the British. He didn't get it from the French. He didn't get it from the Belgians. He got it from bad people. He got it from the Chinese. He got it from the Russians. Okay.
Well,
why are they paying?
He got gifts from the. He got it from the Russians,
right,
and Kazakhstan,
right,
and Ukraine,
right.
That was also reported on Maria Bartiromo.
Yes, some of the most corrupt regimes in the world. Some to include America's enemies. So, what were they giving Hunter Biden? That is the very important question, because at that point, it's no longer a drug addict. It's someone at the highest echelon of power. Was he accepting money as a conduit for other members of the government, of the United States government? Because I can't see what else he was selling the Russians or the Chinese.
Let me ask you a final question, and I'm going to hang up, and I appreciate you
and that's
coming
why it's
on.
important.
I really do.
Yeah.
My question is, do you believe that Joe Biden is compromised by the Chinese and putting our nation in peril?
I would never make that.
Be blackmailed.
Listen, I would never make that charge because I can't prove it.
Yeah.
But I am keeping an open mind to see the evidence. But I will tell you that it's a very curious situation. But I would never accuse the president, as other people accused other presidents, of being in the pockets of hostile foreign governments, because I do not want to make a charge I cannot prove.
Well, it's not a charge. I'm saying, are you concerned that
I'm very
may
concerned.
be a possibility?
That's a different question. Yes, of course I am. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, you gentlemen have a good night.
Thank you.
And it's always good to hear you on, and I always pray for you that for your full recovery. You have a good night.
I appreciate it, sir, and I appreciate your prayers. So, again, folks, in the past, I think we saw the outrageous charges made against Donald Trump that anyone with a background or in a historic knowledge of national security would know were absolutely outrageous, that he was a Russian agent. It was ridiculous. I'll never embarrass myself by making those charges. What I will say is this. I don't understand what Hunter was giving to the Russians and to the Chinese that was worth all the money he got from them. And there's no dispute he got all that money.
Well, there's no disputing he got money from them. There is disputing that he got $1.5 billion. We still don't. That was a figure that's been thrown around that I don't think's ever been confirmed. But we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
1420 WBSM is now also on 99.5 FM.
Children are placed in foster care through no fault of their own. Because of abuse or neglect, it's heartbreaking.
We were just left in a hotel.
Tay and his brothers were adopted with help from the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. But more than 100,000 children in the U.S. are still waiting for a family.
Now that I'm adopted, I can focus on being a kid.
Learn how you can help at davethomasfoundation.org.
HIV is not a crime, or it shouldn't be. People living with HIV can do and live fully healthy lives
without risk of transmitting the virus to others.
But a different fear remains.
In 30 states, Americans are being imprisoned due to their HIV status.
It's time for the laws to catch up to science.
Join the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation to modernize outdated HIV criminalization laws. Go to etaf.org.
HIV is not a crime.
Campaign funded through the support of Gilead Sciences, Incorporated.
WBSM isn't just a broadcast. It's also a podcast. Get all of our podcasts at WBSM.com, the WBSM app, or just search WBSM on your favorite podcast provider.
Welcome back. So we were joined for close to an hour by Congressman Bill Keating, talking about a lot of the global affairs and how important they are, and they are important. And if you missed those, the second hour of the podcast should be up that you can listen to later. The third hour of the podcast will be up a few minutes after this hour ends, which is in about 20 minutes. But what we wanted to talk about, we wanted to draw your attention to, was the podcast from Wednesday night, the first hour, and that was our conversation with Mayor John Mitchell in New Bedford.
So if you missed that, you absolutely should go back and listen to it. First of all, it was a fun show. There's a lot of information. There was a lot of news, man.
There was a lot of information. He talked about, and where a lot of that, I think, he talked about Ash Street for a bit, but I think the really good stuff is the Voc-Tech admissions conversation that we had, because he says he's recommitting to keeping Carol Pimentel as a nominee. We had Sean Oliver, Ward 3 candidate, call in and say he supports her. He would vote for her.
And what's important, Marcus, is as he sat here with us, which you can now listen to, the podcast, and you should read Marcus's story at WBSM.com, he knew, but he couldn't discuss it because it was embargoed, that there was a lawsuit being filed against the state of Massachusetts vocational school.
He did. And
when you listen to that interview, listen that he already knows.
Right.
You can go back in time, folks, with that information.
It was embargoed. Yeah, so we talked about it. He had mentioned it, actually, at Tim's show, too. He had said, this is a federal lawsuit waiting to happen. This is a federal lawsuit waiting to happen, because there are very clear on its face, demographical inequities in how New Bedford Voc and how most of the Voc schools in the Commonwealth admit their students. It is very clear that students who are English language learners, students with disabilities, and students of low income are being necessarily excluded by these admissions policies. It's very clear on its face, and now that's why it's a federal lawsuit.
And he'd been saying that for months, if not years. Years, actually.
He's been fighting this for years. He's been saying that this hasn't been fair, that Voc-Tech is basically an elite prep school that only takes the best, wants all your public dollars without taking any of your public problems, right?
And so Wednesday night, when he was sitting here with us and doing that interview, because of the rules, and he follows them, and I appreciate that, the rules of how things worked, the story was still embargoed.
Yeah.
That there had now been a lawsuit filed.
An embargo is basically a hold on a story. You can't make it public until a certain time. It'll say embargoed till.
Right.
So just for to be clear on that, I received that story from his office, from his public information officer at 9 p.m. and it said embargoed till 10. It was the press conference for the federal lawsuit. So we were able to, I sat in that press conference. Tony Cabral was there, and they had said basically they're moving forward because DESE has basically refused to act on this.
So you can go back and listen to the podcast and read Marcus's story at WBSM.com. And the other things in the podcast, and Marcus, you mentioned it too already, but what you heard was the realities of how municipalities and various local...
We're discriminating against children. Let's just call it what it is.
Well, on that one, but no, I was going to pivot back to the jail, but...
But I just wanted to be clear about how serious, just based on the statistics, how serious those inequities are in those statistics. And I'm not saying that the people at Voc are racist or anything like that. I'm just saying in their pursuit to have a school with less quote-unquote problem students or students who they don't think are worthy of that school, they are excluding protected classes of students. It is a clear statistical demonstrative fact.
So it doesn't matter if your policies are doing it unintentionally or intentionally.
Yeah.
If they discriminate, they're illegal.
It's called de facto discrimination versus de jure discrimination, which would be like separate drinking fountains or separate schools.
Right. So when you listen to that podcast, if you haven't heard it already from Wednesday night, you'll hear the mayor and Marcus and I discuss that.
Yeah.
That the mayor has been going out of his way and that to try to rectify this before the courts have to do it.
Yeah,
right.
And it looks like they're going to have to.
So the other thing I thought was very newsworthy, and it gave us a real inside look at the competition for state dollars. Okay, for well-meaning projects.
Yeah.
To include the rehabilitation of the jail. Right. That now the rehabilitation or the building of a new facility, right, tearing down Ash Street, that is going to be in competition with other worthy projects, all right? And so you're starting to see the competition for dollars, even among people of their own party.
Yeah.
Right? And what's it going to come down to is the governor's going to have to make decisions, right? I think the mayor pointed out, I hadn't really thought about it this way. I just thought I knew from Ash Street, from speaking with the sheriff, it's a lot of money that he's going to need, as it should be, to build a better, more modern facility. But it's going to be competing for dollars with for instance, the criminal justice facility.
Yes,
right.
The new courthouse,
which the mayor pointed out, and other things too.
Yeah, I'm going to have a piece on that too. I have some numbers that I need to get into that I haven't been able to access, but I've been able to access them. We're going to get more numbers about that courthouse thing. That's really important too.
And so I think that as he says, as Mayor Mitchell said, which is what I think we've heard from a lot of the legislative delegation, but not all, is that they support. Of course, they support in building a new facility, updating, doing things like that. However, there's a competition for dollars.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't mean you're opposed to what Sheriff Haru wants to do if you decide that the money is going to go somewhere else in the future.
Yeah.
It is not it's not a pure
He talked
process.
about stuff like port development and things like that.
That's the
they
other
just
one, right?
got a bid for the state pier, and maybe there's going to be money that's going to go there. The courthouse, which is really important as well. I will say, I do think that this should be important. I do think that they've gotten a lot of money into certain things that I'm not just going to explicitly mention, but I think you can all figure out what it is, that are more or less more vanity projects, and this is something that can actually really help people and save taxpayer money.
So, Marcus, just to bring it all the way back around to the New Bedford Voc, when you hear city councilors, in particular Linda Morad, say, we'll just build another Voc. It's not a real thing, folks.
It's not a thing.
That's not a real thing.
That's not a solution. That's not going to happen.
There's a real competition for it. Costs $250 to $500 million to build a modern high school. That's not an answer. Just put Carol Pimentel on the board.
You might as well say we'll build a new school. We'll build a school on every corner, and each kid will get their own personal pony before they upon entry to that school,
as opposed to just not voting for Carol Pimentel.
Yeah. Right, that's the thing. It's saying,
it's not a real difference. It's not a real answer to the issue.
Yeah, and to be clear on that, Morad, she did say that this morning. Gomes said that this morning. Morad voted against Carol Pimentel. Gomes did not. Gomes voted for her. Right. Just wanted to be clear about that. But there were 6 councilors that voted against him, and it seemed to be they all were pretty clear in that they liked the admissions policies.
So look, if you want to vote against Carol Pimentel, fine, vote against it, but don't say you're going to build another school.
Yeah. Right.
You're not going to build another school.
No.
I mean, you heard the mayor talk about...
No one's building another school.
You're not building another school.
No.
I mean, I just want you to understand that when people throw that out there...
That's not real.
There's a competition for state dollars.
Yeah. That's not a real solution.
It's not a real solution.
It's not a real solution.
In fact, it's a friggin' insult.
And
it's an insult, Mark.
It is. And frankly... You're seeing, honestly, I hate to keep, because not everybody, it was a pretty divided vote, so not everybody voted against Carol Pimentel. It was a one vote swing.
And not everyone voted for the same reason.
And not everybody voted for this. I'm not entirely sure about that. But not every, it was a very close vote. But what you're seeing is, those 6 counselors who voted against Carol Pimentel, I'm sorry to say, are on the wrong side of a federal civil rights lawsuit. And so maybe their tenor's changing a little bit, because if you voted against Carol Pimentel, you are now on the wrong side of a federal civil rights lawsuit.
When Mayor Mitchell and informed members of the media were telling you something, we were telling you there's going to be a lawsuit.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's where we're at.
John Mitchell said on the air multiple times.
And when they said, "Oh, the Voc admissions is working," and Burgo said, "Working for whom? Who is it working for?" Right?
Hey, Marcus, what do you think? What do you think those city councilors and school committee members, or I should say, Voc school committee members, are going to say when they get hit with a subpoena to testify in the depositions about their policies?
Yeah.
That's not going to be a friendly experience.
Well, I saw one of the school committee members in that meeting going, "They're attacking us. Desi's attacking us."
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Well, exactly. Let's take a break.
If you want to hear everything.
To the phones. Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey, how's it going?
Good show tonight. Good
Thank
show.
you. Thank you.
Good listening. As far as the Voc issue goes, as soon as I believe Desi is being sued on this.
Yes.
Okay, it's all over.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, we raise the right flag because you don't want to get involved with that thing and money it might involve to try to defend yourself. So it's all over for the state schools with this, and Voc just sort of go to the lottery system and try to train whoever goes in there to do.
Try to educate the kids.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Because it's not the kid's job to make the teacher's job easier.
Yeah, well, I understand that. Okay, but the teacher's job is tough enough as I don't want to knock any teacher.
No, I agree.
Okay.
No, I get it.
The other thing, Marcus, I'd like to congratulate you for asking Representative Keating the question about the bridges. And it could be a delicate question. I don't necessarily buy the answer, okay, as far as a slice. We didn't even get a slice. We didn't even get a crumb, And to me, all the delegation, not just the representative, should have been in contact with Joe Biden's office saying, hey, we need this down here.
Well,
it's a safety issue.
Yeah, the way he phrased it, though, was basically just like, this even when this gets approved is years down the road, so it's not over yet. Well,
the years down the road, I think the term used was 2033. I think that's 100 years the bridges have been up. To me, they got to get going on this, and it should be a priority. And again, to me, it's a safety issue. I like the idea that they have about having this 4 bridges up and then demolishing 2 or whatever. But I have respect for the gentleman. He comes on and gives you an insight that most people don't get in this area. But to me, the entire delegation should be held responsible for this and not getting something out of the Biden administration, especially in a heavily Democratic state. It's just politics. It's nothing to do with slices or crumbs or whatever. But thank you for asking the question.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I knew you had called about it. We had gotten some other calls about it, so I would have been remiss if I didn't ask him the question.
Yeah, but I know it's a delicate, question to someone who's been a friend of the show and a friend of the area. So.
Yeah, it is.
But he doesn't take offense. We ask questions in the right way.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
That's one thing how you guys know how to do.
Right.
Especially you, Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, guys, I'll let you go. Have a good weekend.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we're just wrapping up now. It's Friday.
So, Marcus, I want to echo the caller's sentiment, which was I thought it was a very good question, very important question, and something else for the callers to take to heart, which is that if you tell us something, we might not get around to it that night, but the next opportunity, if we may have to phrase it in a more tactful way than you said it, but we will ask the question. What you want to know is important to us.
Of course.
We want it. So if you ask us a question to follow up with, we will. We may not give the preamble that you want us to give.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that your opinion is important, and we do the best we can to communicate.
Unless I think it's dumb.
Unless Marcus thinks it's dumb. Right. Well, that's what
you won't know until you tell me.
Right. There you go. Take a shot.
And I won't tell you your opinion's dumb.
Right. Well, you might.
I might.
You might.
I have done it before. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. It was a great show. Thanks to Congressman Bill Keating. Thanks to Will Sennott from the New Bedford Light, which is, I know, getting a little crazy with the podcast downloads already. So people are really liking that story.
And once again, folks, if you're cold, go to PACA.
Yeah, go to PACA. That's on 360 Cogswell Street, right across from Golden Greek. If you know somebody who's cold that needs somewhere to stay warm, go to PACA. Carl Alves is taking care of business over there. So
listen, you don't have to be homeless to go there. If your apartment or your house is not adequately heated,
go to PACA.
There.
Yes.
Go there.
Yeah.
Call the police. They will bring you there.
Yes.
And that's for anyone in the region, anyone in my listening voice. Please, I don't want to find out about human ice cubes in the morning, all right?
Yeah. No, seriously. And it's 360 Cogswell Street, or just tell them, bring me to PACA. They'll be there all night up until 10 a.m. tomorrow. So any time of the night that you're feeling cold, that you don't feel like you should be there, it's safe for you to be there, go to PACA, call the police, they'll bring you to PACA. It's really important.
And if you want to drop off a check to PACA, you can do that as well.
Guys, stay tuned. Tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow to Ken Pittman, Jose Matos, and Jess Machado. Tune in to Town Square Sunday with Jim. And